The scent of pine smoke and wild honeysuckle drifted through the open windows of the pack house, but all I could smell was my own fear. It clung to me like a second skin, acidic and bitter, mixing with the lavender oil I'd rubbed on my wrists that morning, my mother's trick for calming nerves. She'd taught me that the summer before she died, her fingers gentle as she'd pressed the small vial into my palm. "For the days when the world feels too loud, Rowan," she'd whispered. "When you forget you're stronger than you know." I touched the vial now, hidden in the pocket of my dress, and tried to believe her words. The great hall thrummed with bodies and noise. Hundreds of wolves gathered for the claiming ceremony. Every unmated Omega in the Northern Territories stood in this room, dressed in their finest clothes, hair gleaming, skin perfect. They laughed and whispered, their confidence a language I'd never learned to speak. I stood near the back, partially hidden behind a stone column, my left hand tucked against my side where the scars began. The burns crawled from my fingertips to my shoulder, a landscape of ruined skin that no amount of healing magic had been able to erase. 5 years since the fire, 5 years of stares and whispers, and the careful way people looked away when they thought I might notice. "Did you hear?" A voice nearby, bright with gossip. "The Alpha King is actually coming, Sebastian Thorne himself." My stomach twisted. Of course he was coming. This ceremony was for him, after all. The great unmated king finally choosing a mate from among the territory's offerings. Every Omega here harbored the same desperate hope, that his eyes would land on them, that they'd be chosen, elevated, transformed into a queen. Every Omega except me. I had no illusions about my place here. I'd been required to attend by pack law, but nobody expected the burn-scarred Omega to catch anyone's eye, let alone a king's. I'd come because refusing would have brought shame to my father, who'd already endured enough whispers about his damaged daughter. I'd come because sometimes the cruelest thing about hope is how it refuses to completely die, even when you know better. "They say he's vicious," another voice added, lower this time. "That he killed 12 rogues with his bare hands last month. That his eyes go black when he's angry. They say he's beautiful too, dangerous beautiful." I closed my eyes and pressed deeper into the shadows. The vial in my pocket felt warm against my palm. "You're stronger than you know." But my mother had been wrong about that. Strength was something you proved, and I'd spent 5 years trying to become invisible. The room suddenly quieted, the change in atmosphere so abrupt. It was like someone had drawn all the oxygen out. I opened my eyes to see the crowd parting, wolves stepping back in a choreographed deference that spoke of instinct and ancient hierarchy. And then I saw him. Sebastian Thorne moved through the crowd like smoke, dark and inevitable. He was taller than I'd imagined, broad-shouldered and lean, dressed in black that seemed to absorb the light around him. His hair was dark too, falling just past his collar, framing a face that was indeed beautiful, but in a way that made you think of winter storms and sharp edges, dangerous beautiful, just as they'd said. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Even from this distance, I could see they were an unusual pale gray, almost silver, and they moved across the room with a kind of predatory assessment that made my wolf whimper and press low in my chest. The ceremony began with traditional words from the territory elder, a wizened wolf named Cordelia, who'd seen 3 generations of pack politics. Her voice carried through the hall, speaking of bonds and destiny and the sacred duty of choosing. I barely heard her. I was too busy trying to make myself smaller, willing myself to fade into the stone column at my back. "The unmated Omegas will come forward," Cordelia announced. "The Alpha King will walk among you. If he finds his mate, the bond will make itself known." My pulse hammered. Around me, Omegas began to move forward, positioning themselves with practiced grace. I stayed where I was, half hidden in shadow. Better to wait until the crowd thinned. Better to stay invisible. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Sebastian Thorne began his walk through the assembled Omegas, and I watched as each one dipped into a respectful curtsy when he passed. He barely glanced at them, his expression unreadable. Some of the bolder ones tried to catch his eye, tilting their heads to expose their throats in the traditional gesture of submission and availability. He ignored them all. Tension built with each step he took. The rejection was palpable. I could feel the disappointment rolling off the Omegas he passed, could see the way their carefully constructed hopes crumbled. Part of me felt a twisted relief. If he rejected all of them, then my own inevitable rejection would be less noticeable, just one more in a long line of no's. He was halfway through the room when his steps faltered. It was so subtle I almost missed it. Just a slight pause, a fraction of a second where his fluid movement hitched. His head turned, those silver eyes scanning the crowd with sudden intensity. He inhaled deeply, scenting the air, and something in his expression shifted, sharpened. He was looking for something. Someone. My wolf stirred uneasily. I pressed harder against the column, making myself as small as possible. This was the moment when he'd find his mate. Probably one of the beautiful omegas at the front with their perfect skin and practiced smiles. This was the moment when his eyes locked on mine. The world narrowed to that single point of connection. Silver eyes meeting mine across a room full of witnesses, and I felt something crack open in my chest. Not the mate bond, I told myself frantically. It couldn't be that. Just fear. Just the natural terror of being seen when you'd spent so long trying to disappear. But he was moving now, cutting through the crowd with purpose. And that crowd was parting for him, heads turning to follow his trajectory. To see where the Alpha King was going. He was coming straight toward me. No. This couldn't be happening. He was probably looking at someone behind me, someone I hadn't noticed. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was only stone wall and shadow. When I looked back, he was closer, close enough that I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his shoulders filled the dark fabric of his shirt. He stopped 3 feet away. The entire hall had gone silent. Every eye was on us now, and I felt the weight of their stares like physical pressure against my skin. My scars burned as if remembering the fire, and I wanted to run, to dissolve, to be anywhere but here. You, Sebastian Thorne said, his voice low and rough, like stones grinding together. Come forward. It wasn't a request. My legs somehow moved, carrying me out of the shadows on instinct and terror. I kept my scarred hand pressed against my side, but I knew everyone could see it, could see the way the burns twisted up my arm and disappeared beneath my sleeve. I could hear the whispers starting, confused and cruel. What's he doing? Her? But she's the scarred one? He can't be serious. I stopped in front of him and forced myself to look up, to meet those silver eyes, even though every instinct screamed to lower my gaze. Up close, he was overwhelming. Not just in size, but in presence, an intensity that felt like standing too close to a fire. For a long moment, he just looked at me. His expression gave nothing away, but I saw his nostrils flare slightly as he scented me. Saw something flicker in those pale eyes. Recognition? Disgust? I braced myself for the rejection, for the moment when he'd turn away and choose literally anyone else. Instead, he did something that made the entire room gasp. He reached out and took my hand. Not my right hand, the unmarred one I'd instinctively started to offer. No, Sebastian Thorne reached for my left hand, the burned one, the one I kept hidden. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and steady, and he turned my hand over gently, looking at the scarred skin with an expression I couldn't read. What happened? He asked quietly, the question somehow intimate despite the hundreds of witnesses. My voice came out barely above a whisper. Fire. 5 years ago, I went back for my mother. The old grief rose up, familiar and heavy. I didn't reach her in time. Something shifted in his eyes. Not pity. I would have hated pity. But something deeper. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of a similar pain. He lifted my scarred hand, and for one horrible moment, I thought he was going to inspect it more closely, put my damage on display for everyone to see. Instead, he did something that stopped my heart. He pressed my palm flat against his chest, right over his heart, and held it there. You bear your courage on your skin, he said, his voice still low but somehow carrying through the silent hall. There is no shame in that. And then, still holding my hand against his heart, Sebastian Thorne turned to face the assembled crowd. When he spoke, his voice rang with unmistakable authority. I have found her. The hall erupted. The chaos that followed his declaration felt like drowning. Voices rose in a cacophony of disbelief and outrage, wolves arguing over each other, the careful decorum of the ceremony shattering like glass. I stood frozen in the center of it all, Sebastian's hand still holding mine against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath my palm, while my own threatened to burst through my ribs. "This is unprecedented," someone shouted. "Lord Garrett," I thought, one of the territory alphas. "The ceremony has protocols. She hasn't even been properly presented." "The Alpha King has made his choice." Cordelia's ancient voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Or do you question his judgment, Garrett?" The dangerous quiet that followed that question made my skin prickle. Nobody questioned an Alpha King, not if they valued their position, their life. Sebastian's thumb moved against my wrist, a gentle back-and-forth motion that seemed absurdly intimate given we were standing in front of hundreds of witnesses. I risked a glance up at him and found him watching me, not the crowd. His expression remained unreadable, but there was something in those silver eyes, a question maybe, or a test. I started to pull my hand away, suddenly aware of how this must look, how presumptuous I must seem. "Your Majesty, I think there's been a mistake." His fingers tightened just slightly, keeping my hand in place. "Do you feel it?" he asked quietly, for my ears only. "The pull?" And God's help me, I did. It had started the moment our eyes met, a magnetism I'd been trying desperately to deny, writing it off as fear or shock or anything other than what it actually was. But now, with my hand against his chest and his scent surrounding me, pine and night air and something darker, like smoke, I couldn't pretend anymore. The mate bond. Faint but unmistakable, a golden thread connecting us that grew stronger with every second of contact. "I feel it," I whispered, the admission costing me everything. Because feeling it and accepting it were two different things, and I knew what came next, the rejection. The moment when he realized what he'd done, claiming a damaged Omega in front of his entire court. He'd find a way to take it back, to save face. They always did. But instead of releasing me, Sebastian turned back to the crowd. "The ceremony is concluded. My mate and I will retire. Cordelia, make the arrangements for the binding ritual. 3 days from now." 3 days. My mind spun. The binding ritual was permanent, a ceremony that would tie us together for life. He couldn't possibly mean it. Sebastian. A new voice, female and sharp. A striking woman with copper hair pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with fury. "You cannot be serious. She's nobody. A scarred Omega from a minor pack with no connections, no power. This is political suicide. Then it's fortunate I don't require your approval, Vera." Sebastian's voice had gone cold, and I felt the change in him. The way his shoulders tensed, how his heartbeat kicked up slightly beneath my palm. "As I recall, you're here as a guest of the Northern Territories, not as my advisor. Vera." The name clicked into place. Vera Ashford, daughter of the Eastern Territories' most powerful pack. Beautiful, connected, ambitious. Everything I wasn't. The kind of Omega everyone had expected him to choose. Her green eyes fixed on me with undisguised hatred. "You think you've won something," she said, her voice dripping venom. "But you're just a temporary fascination. When he realizes what you really are, broken, powerless, pathetic, he'll discard you. And I'll be waiting." The words hit like physical blows, each one finding the soft places where my insecurities lived. Because she was right, wasn't she? This couldn't last. This couldn't be real. Enough. Sebastian's voice cracked through the hall like thunder, and I felt the alpha dominance roll off him in waves. Several wolves nearby dropped their heads instinctively, unable to meet his eyes. "You will show respect to your future queen, or you will leave my territory. Choose." Vera's face went white, then red. For a moment I thought she might actually challenge him, but even she wasn't that foolish. She dipped into a stiff curtsy, her eyes promising murder, and stepped back into the crowd. "Come," Sebastian said to me. And finally, he released my hand, but only to offer me his arm, the gesture formal and unmistakable. A presentation, a claim. I hesitated, aware of every eye on us, every whispered judgment. My father was somewhere in this crowd, probably horrified. my few friends frozen in shock. And here was Sebastian Thorne, the most powerful wolf in all the territories, offering me his arm like I was worthy of standing beside him. "I won't bite," he said, and there was the faintest hint of humor in his voice. "Not unless you ask." The unexpectedness of it startled a small laugh out of me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or relief. I slipped my hand through his arm, feeling the solid strength of him, and let him lead me through the parting crowd. We walked through a gauntlet of stares and whispers, out of the great hall and into the cooler air of the corridor beyond. My legs felt shaky, adrenaline and shock making me lightheaded. None of this felt real. Any moment I'd wake up and find it had all been some elaborate, cruel dream. "Breathe," Sebastian said as we turned down a quieter hallway. "You look like you're about to pass out." "I might," I admitted. I don't understand. Why me?" He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. We were alone now, the sounds of the ceremony fading behind us. In the dimmer light of the corridor, his features looked softer somehow, less intimidating, almost human. "Do you know what I've spent the last 5 years doing, Rowan?" he asked. The use of my name surprised me. I hadn't told him. Someone must have. "Running the territories," I ventured. "Running, fighting, killing when necessary, building alliances and crushing threats." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that seemed almost tired. "I've attended 17 mate ceremonies in 5 years, walked through hundreds of eligible omegas, all perfect and polished and utterly wrong. And then I walk into this hall, and I sent you hiding in the shadows. And for the first time in years, I can breathe." My throat tightened. "I'm not perfect. I'm not polished. I'm brave," he interrupted. "You went into fire for your mother. That's not weakness, Rowan. That's the kind of strength most wolves never find." He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and touched the edge of my sleeve where it covered my scars. "These don't make you less. They make you more." I wanted to believe him. Gods, I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but 5 years of whispers and pity and careful rejection had taught me better. "You don't know me," I said quietly. "What if you're wrong? What if I'm not what you think I am?" "Then we'll figure it out together." He stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, Rowan. I'm asking you to be mine." The words should have frightened me, should have sent me running. Instead, they settled into my chest like an answer to a question I'd been asking my whole life. 3 days, I whispered. "That's not much time to be sure. I've been sure since the moment I saw you." His hand came up, tucking a strand of pale blonde hair behind my ear. The gesture was gentle, almost reverent. "But if you need time to be sure, take it. Spend the next 3 days getting to know me. Ask anything. Go anywhere in the castle. If at the end of it you still have doubts." He paused, something painful crossing his face. "Then I'll let you go." "You'd do that?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Even though I couldn't bring myself to say it. Mates. The word felt too big, too permanent. "Even then." His voice had gone rough again. "I want a partner, Rowan, not a prisoner. If you choose to bind yourself to me, I need it to be real." The vulnerability in that statement staggered me. This powerful, dangerous man who could have anyone, who just claimed me in front of hundreds of witnesses, he was giving me an out, giving me a choice. I thought of my mother's vial in my pocket, thought of her words. "You're stronger than you know." Maybe it was time to find out if that was true. "Okay," I said, the word barely a breath. 3 days. Show me who you are, Sebastian Thorne, and I'll decide if I'm brave enough to be your queen." The smile that crossed his face transformed him entirely, sudden and genuine and devastating. "Deal," he said, and offered his arm again. "Come on, let me show you your rooms. Tomorrow we start." As we walked deeper into the castle that would become my home or my prison depending on the choice I made, I felt the mate bond thrumming between us like a living thing. 3 days to decide my entire future. 3 days to figure out if the burn-scarred Omega could stand beside a king. 3 days to discover if I was strong enough to choose hope over fear. Behind us, I heard footsteps, someone approaching quickly. Sebastian tensed beside me, his body shifting into a protective stance before I even registered the threat. A young man rounded the corner, breathless and urgent. He had kind eyes and sandy hair, and he dipped his head in immediate deference when he saw Sebastian. "Alpha King, forgive the interruption, but there's news from the borders. The rogues—" He glanced at me uncertainly. "Speak," Sebastian commanded. "They've breached the eastern perimeter. 3 packs reported attacks tonight. They're asking for your orders." The transformation in Sebastian was immediate. The gentle man who'd held my hand disappeared, replaced by the Alpha King, hard-edged and deadly. "Mobilize the guard. I want 20 of our best warriors riding east within the hour. Tell Declan to lead them." "And you, my lord?" Sebastian's jaw tightened. He looked at me, conflict clear in his silver eyes. Duty pulling one way, something else pulling another. "Go," I said quietly. "Your territory needs you." "The binding ceremony? We'll still be there in 3 days." I tried to sound more confident than I felt. "Unless you're planning to run off and get yourself killed, in which case we'll need to renegotiate." That startled another smile from him, brief but real. He reached for my hand, the scarred one again, I noticed, and pressed it briefly to his lips. The gesture sent heat spiraling through me. 3 days, Rowan," he promised. "I'll be back in 3 days, and then you'll give me your answer." He released me and strode away, the young messenger hurrying to keep pace. I stood alone in the corridor, my hand still tingling from his kiss, and wondered what exactly I'd just agreed to. Somewhere in the castle, a clock chimed midnight. Day 1 was over. 2 more days to decide if I believed in fairy tales. I didn't sleep that night. The rooms they'd given me were absurdly luxurious, all silk sheets and carved mahogany furniture, with windows that overlooked the eastern mountains where Sebastian had ridden hours ago. I'd stood at those windows until dawn, painted the sky pink and gold, my mother's lavender vial clutched in my hand, trying to make sense of everything that had shattered and reformed in the space of a single evening. When morning finally came, a soft knock at the door announced a young woman with warm brown skin and an efficient manner. "Miss Rowan, I'm Elena. I've been assigned as your lady's maid." She bustled in with a breakfast tray, seemingly unfazed by my disheveled appearance. "I know this must all be overwhelming, but try to eat something. You're going to need your strength today." "Why?" I asked, eyeing the elaborate spread of food with more suspicion than appetite. "What happens today?" Elena's smile was gentle. "Today you meet the inner circle, the Alpha King's closest advisors and friends. They'll want to assess you, figure out who you are. It's tradition when a new mate is chosen." "Assess." The word settled in my stomach like a stone. I picked at a piece of toast, my appetite vanishing entirely. "And if I fail their assessment?" "You won't," Elena said with surprising confidence. She moved to the wardrobe, pulling out a simple but elegant dress in deep emerald. "The Alpha King doesn't make mistakes. If he chose you, there's a reason. Now come, let me help you dress properly." An hour later, I stood outside the council room doors, my heart hammering against my ribs. The dress Elena had chosen brought out the gold in my pale hair, and she'd arranged it in a way that made me look older, more regal. But no amount of fine clothing could hide what I was, a nobody Omega with burn scars and no political value. The doors opened. The room beyond was circular, dominated by a large round table where 5 people sat. They all looked up as I entered, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. I recognized none of them, but I felt the weight of their collective assessment like a physical pressure. "Ah, the famous mate arrives." The speaker was a man in his 40s, broad-shouldered with graying temples and sharp eyes. "Come in, girl. Let's have a look at you." I forced myself to walk forward, to keep my chin up, even though I wanted to flee. As I approached the table, I catalogued each person: the gray-templed man who'd spoken, a younger male with dark curls and an easy smile, a stern woman with silver hair pulled back severely, another woman, smaller and delicate-looking, with knowing eyes, and finally, a massive man who looked like he could break me in half without effort. "Sit," the gray-templed man commanded, gesturing to an empty chair. "I'm General Marcus Steele, head of the King's Guard. This is Declan. He indicated the dark-curled man, our best tracker and Sebastian's second. That's Counselor Iris, who advises on pack politics. The lovely Celeste, who sees things others don't. And the large gentleman is Finn, captain of the northern garrison. I sat carefully, hyper-aware of my scarred hand resting on the table. It's an honor to meet you all. Is it? Iris's voice was cold. Tell me, girl, what do you know about running a territory? Nothing, I admitted, but I'm willing to learn. What about diplomacy? Alliance building? Can you even read? The insult stung, but I kept my voice level. I can read. I've studied history and pack law, though admittedly not at your level. My father made sure I was educated, even if he didn't expect me to use it. Your father. Marcus leaned forward. Thomas Reed of the Northern Ridge Pack. Minor Alpha, moderate influence, no notable achievements. And you, an Omega, who couldn't even secure a mate within your own pack. Forgive my bluntness, but what exactly do you bring to this union besides a pretty face? Except my face wasn't pretty, not anymore. Not with the scar that crept up the left side of my neck. He knew that. They all knew that. This was a test, seeing if I'd break. I met his gaze steadily. You're right. I bring no political connections, no powerful family, no particular skills that would benefit the kingdom. What I bring is what Sebastian saw worth claiming, myself. If that's not enough for you, then perhaps you should take it up with your king. Silence fell. Then Declan laughed, the sound unexpected and genuine. I like her, he announced. She's got spine. Spine won't stop a war, Iris countered. Spine won't navigate the complex alliances we've spent years building. The Eastern Territory is already threatening to withdraw support because of this impulsive choice. Let them. Celeste spoke for the first time, her voice soft, but carrying unusual weight. The Eastern Territory has been looking for an excuse to break away for years. Better to know where they stand now than later. Easy for you to say, Marcus growled. You don't have to strategize how to defend our borders with reduced forces. They began arguing among themselves, and I realized I was being forgotten, dismissed as irrelevant to the real conversation. Part of me wanted to shrink back, to accept my place as an afterthought, but another part, the part that had run into fire for my mother, the part that had survived 5 years of whispers and rejection, refused to disappear. What if I could help? The words came out before I could stop them. The argument ceased. All eyes turned to me. Help how? Iris asked, skepticism dripping from every word. I swallowed hard, committing to the path. You said the Eastern Territory is threatening to withdraw, but they won't. Not really. They need the trade routes through our lands too badly. Their economy depends on access to the northern ports. Marcus's eyebrows rose. You know this how? My father might not be important, but he talks. And I listen. I leaned forward slightly, warming to my subject. The Eastern Territory is posturing, trying to use this situation to negotiate better terms. But if you call their bluff, offer to redirect the trade routes through the Southern Territory instead, they'll back down. The Southern packs would jump at the opportunity and the East would lose everything. Silence. Then Declan grinned. Told you she had spine. It's not a bad strategy, Celeste said thoughtfully. Risky, but not bad. Even Iris looked grudgingly impressed. You've thought about this. I've had a long night, I admitted. And not much else to do except think about how to not be completely useless to you all. Finn spoke for the first time, his voice a deep rumble. The girl has sense. More than some I've seen Sebastian show interest in. He looked at me directly. But sense isn't enough. This life will eat you alive if you let it. Kings have enemies. Can you handle that? Can you handle watching him ride to battle knowing he might not come back? The question hit harder than he'd intended, I think, because I'd already watched someone I loved disappear into flames. I'd already learned what it meant to lose everything. I watched my mother die, I said quietly. I tried to save her and failed, so yes, I know what loss feels like, and yes, it terrifies me, but fear isn't a reason to not try. Fear is just part of loving someone. The room had gone very still. You love him already? Marcus asked, his tone different now. Gentler. I don't know him well enough to love him, I said honestly. But I feel the bond. And I know what it's asking of me, to trust someone I just met with my entire future, to believe that maybe, possibly, I could be what he needs. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. I know you all think I'm wrong for him, that I'm too weak, too damaged, too nothing, and maybe you're right. But he chose me anyway, so for the next 2 days, I'm going to try to prove that choice wasn't completely insane, and if I can't, I shrugged, trying for bravado I didn't feel. Then at least I'll have tried. Declan stood abruptly, coming around the table. For a moment I thought he might attack. These were predators after all, and I was prey. But instead, he offered his hand. Welcome to the madness, Rowan Reed. You're going to fit in just fine. I took his hand, and he pulled me to my feet with easy strength. Really? Really. He grinned. Anyone who can stand up to Marcus on day 1 is either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and I'm choosing to believe it's the former. It might be both, I muttered, but I felt something loosening in my chest. Acceptance, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. Come on, Declan said. Let me show you around properly. If you're going to be queen, you need to know this place. We left the council room together, and I felt the other's eyes on my back, still assessing, still judging, but maybe, just maybe, starting to reconsider. The day passed in a blur of corridors and introductions. Declan proved to be an excellent guide, filling the tour with stories that made the castle feel less like a fortress and more like a home. He showed me the training grounds where Sebastian spent his mornings, the library that held centuries of pack history, the gardens where night-blooming flowers released their scent under the moon. He comes here sometimes, Declan said as we walked through those gardens in the late afternoon, when the weight of everything gets too heavy. He sits on that bench there and just breathes. I looked at the bench, trying to imagine Sebastian, powerful, dangerous Sebastian, needing a place to simply breathe. It made him seem more real somehow, more human. What's he like? I asked. Really like, I mean. Not the king part. Just him. Declan was quiet for a moment, considering. Lonely, he finally said. He's been lonely for a long time, even before his father died and he took the crown. People see the power and the authority, but they don't see the cost. Every decision he makes affects thousands of lives. Every mistake could mean war. That kind of pressure, it isolates you. Is that why he hasn't chosen a mate before now? Partly. But mostly because he refused to choose someone just for political advantage. He wanted... Declan paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. He wanted what his parents had. Real partnership. Real trust. He'd rather be alone than settle for less. The words settled over me like a weight. Sebastian hadn't just chosen me despite my scars. He'd chosen me because of something he saw in me. Something he'd been searching for. The responsibility of that was staggering. What if I disappoint him? The question escaped before I could stop it. Declan's expression softened. Then you disappoint him. Nobody's perfect, Rowan. Not even kings. He bumped my shoulder gently with his. But for what it's worth, I don't think you will. You're already braver than you realize. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, and I found myself relaxing slightly. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could find a place here, build something real. That's when the scream shattered the peaceful afternoon. It came from the eastern wall, high-pitched and terrified. Declan's entire body went rigid, his hand flying to the blade at his hip. Stay here, he commanded, already running toward the sound. But I didn't stay. Couldn't stay. Something in that scream called to a part of me I'd thought died in the fire. The part that ran toward danger instead of away from it. I followed Declan through the garden gates and into the courtyard beyond. What I saw there stopped my heart. A child, couldn't have been more than 7, stood frozen in the center of the yard. And stalking toward her, teeth bared and eyes wild with bloodlust, was a rogue wolf, massive and scarred, foam flecking its muzzles, clearly rabid or mad with something worse. Declan was too far away. The guards were scrambling but not fast enough. And the child, gods, the child was going to die. I didn't think. Thinking would have stopped me, and there wasn't time for stopping. I ran, my dress tangling around my legs, my scarred hand reaching for the only weapon I could find, a decorative iron poker from a nearby brazier. The rogue saw me coming and snarled, but its attention was still locked on the easier prey. The child. "Hey!" I screamed and threw the poker. It hit the wolf's flank, not hard enough to wound, but enough to get its attention. Those mad eyes swung toward me, and I saw my death in them. But at least the child could run. The wolf charged. Time fractured into crystalline moments. The wolf's snarl, the child's sob as she finally ran, the thunder of my pulse in my ears. The rogue was massive, easily twice my size, and I had nothing but my bare hands and a desperate, stupid courage that felt like my mother's ghost moving through me. "You're stronger than you know." The wolf leaped, and I dropped low, rolling to the side the way I'd seen my father's warriors train. Claws raked the air where my throat had been. I came up gasping, my dress torn, adrenaline singing through my veins like lightning. "Rowan, get back." Declan's voice, closer now but still too far. The rogue circled, hackles raised, calculating. Rabid didn't mean stupid. It meant unpredictable, which was worse. I kept my eyes on it, backing slowly toward where I'd dropped the poker. If I could just reach it, the wolf feinted left, then struck right. I threw myself backward, hit the ground hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. Pain exploded through my shoulder where I'd landed on stone. The rogue was on me in an instant. Hot breath reeking of rot and madness, jaws opening wide. Then a silver blade erupted from its throat. The wolf made a horrible gurgling sound and collapsed, its weight pinning my legs. I stared in shock as blood pooled on the cobblestones, black and wrong-smelling. Declan appeared above me, breathing hard, his blade dripping crimson. "Are you insane?" he demanded. Even as he shoved the dead wolf off me and hauled me to my feet, his hands moved over me rapidly, checking for injuries. "What were you thinking, running at a rogue with nothing but a fireplace poker?" "I was thinking that child was going to die," I managed, my voice shaking now that the danger had passed. My legs felt like water. I was thinking someone had to do something. Someone did do something. The guards, me, people who are actually trained for this. But his anger was undercut by something else in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the commotion. I saw the child, safe now, clutched in her mother's arms, both of them crying. I saw the guards who'd arrived too late, shamefaced and shaken. I saw Iris pushing through the crowd, her stern face gone white. "Secure the perimeter," she ordered sharply. "If one rogue got through, there may be more. And someone find out how in all the hells this happened. Our wards should have prevented—" She stopped, her eyes landing on me. On the torn dress, the blood spattering my skin, the wolf's blood, not mine, thankfully. "You." I straightened, trying to look less like I was about to collapse. "Me. You threw yourself at a rabid rogue. It wasn't a question. The child—" I saw. Iris's expression was unreadable. "That was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." Declan said the same thing, I muttered. I'm starting to sense a theme. The tiniest smile cracked Iris's severe expression. "Come. You need to be cleaned up before Sebastian returns and finds out his mate nearly became rogue bait on day 2. Sebastian's back? My heart lurched. Riding in now. The Eastern situation was resolved faster than expected. Iris's gaze sharpened, which means he'll hear about this incident within moments of arriving. Best you're there to tell him yourself before rumors make it worse. She was right. I let Elena hustle me back to my rooms, help me out of the ruined dress and into a bath. The hot water stung a dozen small cuts I hadn't noticed receiving, and my shoulder was already bruising purple where I'd hit the ground. But I was alive. The child was alive. I thought that might be enough. Elena dressed me in soft gray wool that covered most of the damage, though nothing could hide the scrape on my cheek, or the way I moved stiffly. "He's going to be furious," she predicted, braiding my hair with gentle efficiency. "The Alpha King doesn't take threats to his mate lightly. It wasn't a threat to me specifically. It was a rogue that got through your defenses. He won't see the distinction." She pinned the braid in place. "There. You look presentable, at least. Now go, before he comes looking for you." I found Sebastian in the war room, still in riding leathers, studying a map with Marcus and Finn. He looked up when I entered, and the relief that crossed his face was so naked it made my breath catch. Then his eyes tracked over me, the scrape on my cheek, the careful way I held myself, and that relief transformed into something colder. Dangerous. What happened? His voice was deadly calm. A rogue breached the eastern wall. Marcus answered before I could speak. It was put down, but not before. Not before what? Sebastian's eyes never left mine. I lifted my chin. Not before I did something stupid. The muscle in his jaw ticked, everyone out. Marcus and Finn exchanged glances but obeyed, filing out silently. The door closed with a definitive thud, leaving us alone in the room that suddenly felt too small. "Show me," Sebastian said quietly. "It's nothing, just some bruises." "Show me." The alpha command in his voice made my wolf whimper and submit. I turned slowly, letting him see the bruises darkening my shoulder where the dress had slipped down slightly, the scrapes on my arms. I heard him inhale sharply. When I turned back, his hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his eyes that dangerous silver black I'd heard about. Tell me exactly what happened. So I did. The garden, the scream, the child frozen in terror, the rogue stalking toward her with murder in its eyes, my decision to run, to distract, to buy time for someone who actually knew what they were doing to arrive. "You threw yourself at a rabid rogue," Sebastian said when I finished, his voice still that terrible calm. "Armed with a fireplace poker." "I threw the poker at the rogue," I corrected. "I faced it with nothing, which in retrospect was perhaps not my best." "Perhaps not your best?" The calm shattered. "Rowan, you could have died. That child has trained guards whose job it is to protect her. You are—" He stopped, running both hands through his hair in frustration. "Gods, you're my mate. Do you understand what it would have done to me if something had happened to you?" The raw pain in his voice stopped my defensive response. I'd been so focused on justifying my actions that I hadn't considered how they would affect him. The mate bond worked both ways. If I'd been hurt, he would have felt it. If I'd died, "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't think about that. There was a child, Sebastian. She was going to die, and I couldn't just stand there and let it happen." "Why not?" The question came out almost desperate. "Why couldn't you let the guards handle it? Let someone else be the hero?" "Because I'm not someone who stands by." The words emerged with more force than I'd intended. I went into fire for my mother. I know what it's like to try to save someone and fail. But at least I tried. At least she knew in those final moments that someone cared enough to come for her. My voice cracked. I can't be the person who watches and does nothing, Sebastian. I can't. Even if it means being stupid and reckless and giving you gray hair before the binding ceremony. That's who I am. The silence stretched between us, heavy with things unsaid. Then Sebastian crossed the distance between us in 3 strides and pulled me against him. Careful of my injuries but unmistakably possessive, his heart thundered against my ear. "You're going to be the death of me," he murmured into my hair. "Brave, reckless, impossible woman. Is that a deal breaker?" I asked, my voice muffled against his chest. "Because we still have a day before I have to give you my answer. You could still change your mind about the whole queen thing." He pulled back just enough to look down at me, one hand coming up to cup my uninjured cheek. "Change my mind? Rowan, after today, half the court is talking about your courage. The child's mother has been asking everyone who you are so she can thank you properly. Declan says you didn't hesitate, didn't freeze. You saw danger and ran toward it." His thumb brushed my cheekbone gently. "You're exactly what I need, what we need. Someone who leads with their heart, who cares more about doing what's right than what's safe, even if it makes you furious, especially then." His smile was crooked, almost rueful. "I don't want a mate who sits quietly and lets others take risks. I want a partner who stands beside me, who fights when fighting is needed. The smile faded. "I need you to understand that your life matters, Rowan. To me. You can't throw it away carelessly." I wasn't throwing it away. I was buying time. By making yourself bait. It worked, didn't it? He closed his eyes briefly, as if praying for patience. You're impossible. So you've mentioned. I softened, letting my hand come up to rest over his heart, the way he'd positioned it that first night. I'll try to be more careful. I can't promise I won't still do stupid things when people I care about are in danger, but I'll try to find a balance between being brave and being reckless. That's all I ask. He covered my hand with his, holding it in place. Now come. There's someone who wants to meet you. He led me out of the war room and through corridors I was beginning to recognize. We ended up in a small sitting room where the child from the courtyard sat with her mother, both of them rising quickly when we entered. Your Majesty, the mother said, dropping into a curtsy. The child did the same, though her eyes were fixed on me with an expression of awe. Lady Helena, Sebastian acknowledged. I believe you've been asking about my mate. Yes, my lord. I wanted... Helena's voice caught. I wanted to thank her. My daughter Lily, she's all I have. If this lady hadn't... Tears spilled down her cheeks. I crossed to them, uncomfortable with the gratitude but unable to turn away from it. You don't need to thank me. Anyone would have... But they didn't, Lily interrupted, her voice small but firm. The guards were too far. You ran when everyone else was frozen. You saved me. She held out something, a small carved wooden flower. I made this for you. It's not very good, but it's perfect, I said, taking the flower carefully. It was rough-hewn, but made with obvious care, each petal distinct. Thank you, Lily. I'll treasure it. The child beamed, and something in my chest loosened. This was why I'd run, why I'd always run toward the fire instead of away, because some things were worth the risk. After Helena and Lily left, Sebastian and I stood in the quiet sitting room. Night had fallen fully now, stars visible through the tall windows. One day left before the binding ceremony. One day left to decide. I want to show you something, Sebastian said. Will you come with me? I nodded, and he led me through the castle to a tower I hadn't explored yet. We climbed stairs until we emerged onto the roof, where the night wind carried the scent of pine and distant snow. From here, I could see the entire territory spread out below. Forests and mountains and valleys, all touched with moonlight. This is where I come, Sebastian said quietly, when I need to remember why I do this. Why I carry the weight of the crown, make the impossible decisions, send good wolves to die in border skirmishes. He gestured to the vista, all of this. Every pack, every family, every life. That's what I'm responsible for. I understood what he was showing me. Not just the beauty of his territory, but the burden of it. The weight he carried alone. You don't have to be alone anymore, I said softly. That's what a mate is for, isn't it? Sharing the weight? He turned to look at me, moonlight catching in his silver eyes. Is that your answer, then? You'll bind yourself to me? To all of this? I thought about the past 2 days, about Marcus's tests and Iris's skepticism and the rogue's snapping jaws, about the council room and the gardens and the child's grateful tears, about this man who'd held my scarred hand and called me brave and trusted me to choose freely. I thought about my mother's voice. You're stronger than you know. Ask me tomorrow, I said. When the 3 days are up, ask me properly. His smile was slow and warm and full of promise. Tomorrow, then. We stood on the tower roof under the stars, and I felt the future opening before me like a door I could choose to walk through. Choose to be brave enough to walk through. One more day. The morning of the binding ceremony dawned cold and clear, the kind of crystalline winter day that made everything sharp and bright, and almost painfully beautiful. I stood at my window watching the sun rise over the mountains, my mother's lavender vial warm in my palm, and tried to quiet the storm of emotions churning through my chest. Today, I would give Sebastian my answer. Today, I would choose. Elena arrived with breakfast I couldn't eat, and a dress that took my breath away, white silk that flowed like water, embroidered with silver thread that caught the light. It was beautiful and terrifying and entirely too real. The ceremony is at noon, Elena said, as she helped me into the dress. The entire court will be there, all the territory alphas, the council, everyone who matters. She met my eyes in the mirror. No pressure. I laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. None at all. For what it's worth, Elena said quietly, I think you're going to be a wonderful queen. You have something the last few candidates didn't. You actually care about people, about doing what's right. That matters more than politics or perfect bloodlines. I hope the court agrees with you. They will. Eventually. She finished the last button. There. You look like a queen already, but I didn't feel like one. I felt like a scared Omega with burn scars and impossible choices, playing dress-up in borrowed finery. A knock at the door made us both jump. Declan's voice came through. Rowan, can I come in? Elena opened the door, and Declan stepped inside, stopping short when he saw me. Wow, he said simply. Sebastian's going to swallow his tongue when he sees you. Despite everything, I smiled. That's the plan. I actually came to give you something. He held out a small wooden box, worn smooth with age. This belonged to Sebastian's mother. He asked me to bring it to you before the ceremony. I took the box with trembling fingers and opened it carefully. Inside lay a circlet of silver, delicate and ancient, set with moonstones that gleamed with inner light. A crown. Simple, but unmistakably regal. It's tradition, Declan explained. The Alpha King's mate wears this during the binding. It's been in his family for 9 generations. 9 generations of queens who'd worn this crown. 9 generations of women who'd stood where I was about to stand and chosen to bind their lives to the wolves who ruled these territories. The weight of that history pressed down on me, both terrifying and oddly comforting. I wasn't the first to be scared, wouldn't be the last. There's something else, Declan said, his tone shifting to something more serious. Sebastian wanted you to know. You can still say no. Even now, even with the court assembled, if you walk away, he'll accept it. No consequences, no punishment. You'll be free to return to your pack with his blessing and protection, the escape route, the final out. Part of me wanted to take it, to run back to the safety of invisibility and low expectations. But a larger part, the part that had run into fire, that had faced a rabid rogue with nothing but a poker, that had stood up to Marcus's interrogation, that part knew running wasn't the answer. I'd spent 5 years hiding from the world. Maybe it was time to stop. Tell Sebastian, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, that I'll see him at the ceremony. Declan's grin was immediate and bright. That's my queen. He bowed, actually bowed, and left me alone with Elena and my racing thoughts. The next hour passed in a blur of final preparations. Elena wove my pale hair into an intricate braid, weaving in winter flowers that filled the room with their delicate scent. She applied subtle cosmetics that made my eyes look larger, more luminous. When she finally stepped back, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. It's time, she said softly. The walk to the great hall felt both endless and too short. My heart hammered against my ribs, each step an act of will. The doors stood open, and beyond them, I could hear the murmur of hundreds of voices, could feel the weight of expectation and judgment pressing against me like a physical force. I stopped at the threshold, suddenly frozen. This was it, the moment of choice. Once I walked through these doors, there would be no going back. You're stronger than you know. I touched the lavender vial hidden in a pocket Elena had sewn into the dress, felt the solid weight of my mother's love, her belief in me. She'd faced her own fire and hadn't looked away. Could I do any less? I stepped forward. The hall fell silent as I entered. Every eye turned to me, hundreds of wolves witnessing this moment. I kept my gaze straight ahead, fixed on the altar at the far end of the hall where Sebastian waited. He stood in formal black, the Alpha King in all his terrible beauty and power, and even from this distance I felt the pull of the bond between us, golden and strong and undeniable. I walked the long aisle alone. Tradition dictated the Omega come to the Alpha, not the other way around. Each step felt like both a surrender and a claim. With every footfall, I was choosing him, choosing this life, choosing to believe I could be brave enough, strong enough, enough. Sebastian's expression as I approached was carefully controlled, but his eyes held everything. Hope and fear and desperate longing. the same emotions churning through my own chest. When I finally reached him and stopped, close enough to touch, I saw his hands were trembling slightly. "Rowan Reed," Elder Cordelia's voice rang out, formal and ancient. "You stand before this assembly to make your choice. Do you come of your own free will to bind yourself to Sebastian Thorne, Alpha King of the Northern Territories?" This was it. The moment. I could still say no, could still walk away. I looked up at Sebastian, met those silver eyes that had seen me, really seen me, when everyone else looked away. I thought about the way he'd held my scarred hand, called me brave, given me 3 days to choose freely. I thought about his loneliness and his burden, the way he'd shown me his soul on that tower roof under the stars. I thought about the woman I wanted to be. Not the scared Omega hiding from the world, but someone who ran toward the fire. Someone who chose love over fear. "I do," I said, my voice carrying through the silent hall. "I come of my own free will to bind myself to Sebastian Thorne." The relief that crossed his face was devastating. He reached for my hands, both of them, scarred and whole, and held them gently. "And I accept your choice," he said, the formal words made intimate by the way he looked at me. "I claim you as my mate, my partner, my queen. I vow to honor you, protect you, and stand beside you for all the days of my life." Cordelia stepped forward with a silver cord, ancient and gleaming. She wrapped it around our joined hands, binding us together. "By the laws of pack and territory, by the bonds of mate and crown, I declare you bound. Sebastian Thorne, Alpha King. Rowan Reed, his chosen queen." The cord glowed briefly, warm against my skin, and I felt something shift deep in my chest. The mate bond, no longer just a pull but a connection, solid and real and permanent. I could feel Sebastian's heartbeat as if it were my own, could sense his emotions thrumming through the link between us. Love. Fierce and protective and all-consuming. He pulled me close and kissed me, claiming me before the entire court, and the hall erupted in cheers and howls. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he touched his forehead to mine. "My brave, impossible queen," he murmured. "Thank you for choosing me." "Thank you for making me want to choose," I whispered back. Cordelia placed the moonstone circlet on my head, the weight of it settling like both a crown and a promise. When I turned to face the assembled court as their queen, I saw the mixture of reactions, some approving, some skeptical, some openly hostile. But I also saw Helena and Lily in the crowd, the child waving excitedly. Saw Declan grinning like a fool. Saw even Marcus and Iris nodding with what looked like approval. The celebration that followed was overwhelming. Endless introductions and congratulations, political maneuvering disguised as well-wishes, careful alliances being formed and tested. Through it all, Sebastian stayed by my side, his hand at the small of my back or holding mine, a constant reassuring presence. Late in the evening, as the celebration continued around us, Vera Ashford approached. I'd been half expecting her, half dreading this confrontation. "Congratulations, Your Majesty," she said, the title delivered with just enough edge to make it an insult. "You must be very pleased with yourself." "I'm pleased to have found my mate," I replied evenly, "as you would have been, had the bond led to you." Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise at my directness, maybe. "The bond," she repeated. How convenient that it chose someone so unexpected. One might almost wonder if magic was involved. Sebastian went very still beside me, but I squeezed his hand gently. This was my fight. "You're right to be skeptical," I said, surprising her again. "I would be too, in your position. A nobody Omega with no connections, no power, no apparent value. It does seem convenient." I met her gaze steadily, but the bond doesn't care about politics or bloodlines or what makes sense. It cares about compatibility, about two souls that complement each other. And apparently, my scarred, impossible soul complements his. How poetic. Her voice dripped sarcasm. I wonder how long that poetry will last when you're faced with actual governance, when your naivety gets people hurt. When I make mistakes, I interrupted. I will make mistakes, Vera, probably spectacular ones. I'm new to this, and I'm learning as I go. But I'll learn, and I'll grow, and I'll fight for this territory and these people with everything I have, because that's who I am. And I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You can hate me if you want. You can wait for me to fail, but I'm not going anywhere. So you need to decide. Are you going to be an enemy who has to be watched, or an ally who can be trusted? For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then, incredibly, she laughed, short and bitter, but genuine. You've got spine. I'll give you that. She dipped into a minimal curtsy. Your Majesty. This time, the title held a grudging respect. As she walked away, Sebastian pulled me close. You just made an ally out of your worst enemy. How did you do that? Honesty, I said simply. And acknowledging her concerns instead of dismissing them. People respect truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Gods, I love you, Sebastian said, and then stopped, looking almost surprised by his own words. My breath caught. What? I love you, he repeated, more certain now. I know it's fast. I know we've only had 3 days, but Rowan, I love you. Your courage, your compassion, the way you run toward danger instead of away, the way you see people, really see them, the way you chose to stand beside me even when it would have been easier to run. His hand came up to cup my face. I love you. Tears pricked my eyes. I love you too, I whispered. I think I started falling the moment you held my scarred hand and called me brave. He kissed me again, softer this time, full of promise and hope and the future stretching before us. Around us, the celebration continued, but we stood in our own small island of peace, two souls bound together by choice and chance and the mysterious workings of fate. Later that night, when the court had finally dispersed and we were alone in the rooms that were now ours, Sebastian helped me remove the moonstone circlet. His fingers were gentle as they worked through my elaborate braid, freeing my hair. Are you scared? He asked quietly. Terrified, I admitted. But also hopeful. Is that strange? Not strange at all. He turned me to face him. I'm scared too. Scared I won't be the partner you need. That the weight of this life will crush the light I see in you. That... I put my fingers over his lips, silencing him. We'll figure it out together. That's what this bond means, right? Neither of us has to carry everything alone anymore. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm, to the scars that marked me, that told the story of my courage and my loss. Together, he agreed. That night, lying in his arms, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the fire that had scarred me to the ceremony that had crowned me, from the invisible Omega hiding in shadows to the queen who'd chosen to step into the light. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and enemies, mistakes and hard lessons. But I wouldn't face them alone. I'd face them with Sebastian beside me, with allies slowly becoming friends, with a purpose larger than simply surviving. I'd face them as Queen Rowan, the burn-scarred Omega who'd learned that scars were just proof you'd fought battles and survived, that damage didn't mean broken, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was choose hope over fear. In the morning, there would be work to do, alliances to strengthen, policies to learn, a territory to help govern. But tonight, I simply held my mate and let myself feel the peace of finally belonging. My mother's vial sat on the nightstand, catching moonlight. You're stronger than you know, she'd told me. She'd been right all along. I was strong enough to run into fire. Strong enough to face a rogue with nothing but courage. Strong enough to stand before a court and claim my place. Strong enough to love a king and let him love me back. The burn scars on my hand caught the light as I traced patterns on Sebastian's chest, and I saw them differently now, not as marks of loss and pain, but as symbols of survival, of the moment I'd chosen to fight for what mattered. Even knowing I might lose, they were beautiful in their way. Beautiful because they were mine, and they'd brought me here, to this room, this man, this life, to a future I'd had to be brave enough to choose. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, covering the territory in white. A new season, a new beginning. And somewhere in the castle, a 7-year-old girl named Lily slept peacefully, clutching a wooden flower, alive because one scarred Omega had decided that hiding wasn't the same as living. I closed my eyes and let sleep take me, wrapped in warmth and love and the unshakable certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be, the burn-scarred Omega who became a queen. Not despite her scars, but because of everything they represented: courage, love, hope, and the strength to keep choosing them, again and again, for all the days to come.